Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Shure Talk. Today, together with me, there is Marwan, who is a marketing manager at Shure Mia with me. I'd love to say in my office, but it doesn't make much sense in these days where we're working from home. And Augusto Marcondes, who is a technical manager, technical training manager at Audinate. Hi, Augusto. How are you?
Hello, Andrea. Hello, everyone who is here with us. It's a great pleasure to be part of this webinar with you today.
So let's start from the people. Would you like to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about you. Where are you from? Where are you sitting now? And things like this.
It's a pleasure for me. So, first of all, my name is Augusto Marcondes, but in the English-speaking countries and to facilitate, people normally call me Gus. So if you want to find me also on social media, LinkedIn mainly, you can also find me as Gus Audinate. I'll be on your results. So I am originally from Brazil. So my father is Brazilian and my mother is Italian. So I am half and half. And I've always been a musician, started singing and playing when I was 5 years old. And then I decided to study audiovisual in the university. And then I've done also my master's, and I'm about to start a doctorship now living here in England. So I am in the UK working from home, as pretty much all of us, but I do represent all the training facilities for the Europe, Middle East, and Africa region. So I kind of share the same regions with Andrea as well. I've joined Audinate in January, and since then I've been putting all the efforts to bring the content and spread the good Dante word for everybody to start speaking Dante as soon as possible. That's it for me.
Okay. Dante word. I'd like to know more and to ask you more about Audinate as a company. But before, I'd like to know something more about, do you know why they chose the name Dante?
I mean, for Italian people, the name Dante is a very, very strong name. And actually, it was a kind of a natural birth of the name. So when they were developing the protocol, so the Audinate company started pretty much in 2006 with a bunch of ex-Motorola employees. They joined a national institute called NICTA, and they were doing some experiments still in the laboratory trying to solve the connectivity problems, because of course they were network engineers, they were unified communications engineers, they were communications engineer, but they were inside musicians, as much of us here are. So they started naming that project as Digital Audio Network. So it was a kind of a done name originally. But then as the protocol travels through Ethernet frames, then it ended up being called Dante. And of course, it has also a very interesting meaning because in Italy, Dante Alighieri was the father of the language that also unified all the reigns and all the monarchies in that peninsula. So Dante Alighieri unified all the languages in Italy, and Dante by Audinate is also unifying all the communications of all manufacturers in the AV industry. So yeah, there's a kind of an acronym that is Digital Audio Network through Ethernet. That's the story.
Okay, so we didn't risk that the protocol was called Shakespeare or something like that. That's good to know.
Exactly. Luckily, it wasn't called Dostoevsky.
So, Audinate is not mainly focusing on selling products to end user and customers, even though I know you have some products for end users. But what is the main business model? How do you operate at Audinate?
So Audinate has actually a very, very interesting partnership operation style with the manufacturer. So for example, Shure is one of the top partners that has adopted the Dante protocol and has implemented that in several products. So the idea of Audinate working with partners is that we provide the transport protocol, the communication. So each brand can still be dedicated on developing the best microphones, the best preamps, the best speakers, the best mixing consoles, and so on. So Audinate acts in two kinds of levels. One is with the partners, with other manufacturers, and then to allow the end users, the professionals like you and me, to be able to take that technology to the next level, we do provide some software and recently some pieces of gear called Avio adapters that are made to bring any product that it was a kind of a pre-Dante product to the Dante network as well. So as you asked me, we do have partners, manufacturers, also software developers that have already adopted the Dante protocol inside their software. And for the end users, for the professionals, we do have some free software, for example, Dante Controller, which is the main panel to configure, to patch, to do all your system, and some other software to help increase that potential. For example, Dante Virtual Sound Card that brings your computer to the Dante network, Dante Via that also brings each specific software that you have inside your computer to and from the Dante network as well. Lately, we released the Dante Domain Manager. So this is for a big level skill of management of each separate Dante networks with user access, levels of security, alerts, proactive alerts via email, stuff like this. So in this picture here, you can see the modules, those beautiful red, like my shirt, modules and chipsets. But below the module is our Dante Avio. We have them in various models, and we are also releasing some new ones soon, so stay tuned. And the other screens are from the software that we provide, being the upper right, the one that you can read Dante with a matrix style of interface. That is the free software Dante controller that you can download at any time.
Okay, after we kind of introduced you, I'd like to do a little bit of housekeeping. On the right of your screen for the attendees, you have the possibility to ask questions to Gus, and we'll use also the chance to ask you some questions. So feel free to ask any question, but I'd really like to focus today on why we do things more than how we do things. So we may have better channels for learning how to deal with Dante. Today, I'd really love to focus on the potential and the capabilities of audio over IP in our industry, and how this can improve our workflow, how we can make it better, and eventually how it will develop in the future. More than, okay, I have this problem with this specific device, so we'll try to keep our eyes a little more towards the sky and not towards our daily problems. That said, maybe Marwan at some point will use the poll menu to ask our attendees some questions, and so we can understand a little more about who's attending. I see that there is a new poll live, so you can answer there, you can interact with us in the chat, and you can ask a question in the Q&A section. So Dante is a audio digital audio transport protocol, but it doesn't come out of a blue. So it's not that before we had XLR only, and one day Dante appeared. As much as Dante Alighieri didn't really invent the Italian language out of nothing, it took what was there and changed it and evolved it. So I would start a little bit with a history of audio over Ethernet cable. I know it's not the best way to call it, but it was different before Dante, but we had other things. So do you want to tell us a little more about the history of and the evolution of digital audio through Ethernet?
Sure, with pleasure. So guys, I hope that everybody here has already had some experience with the analog multi-cores. That is where everything started, because once you used to plug your guitar straight to something, and that was a very simple connectivity system. When you started working with more inputs, bigger systems, more stages, if we're talking to the live people here, or the corporate environments, if we were thinking about multi-floor systems. So first of all, we had the point-to-point analog multicore. Here we have in the picture an example of how a very thick cable would come from the stage box down to the mixing console. Next slide, please, Andrea. So guys, a point-to-point idea is when you have one specific channel coming through the stage box to the front of house. With the digitalization of audio, so think about the analog to digital conversion that started to be developed in the 80s and got really, really popular in the 90s. So when we started using digitalized audio, there was a kind of an evolution from the analog multicore that looks pretty much like this. So on that stage box, we would have various inputs that would then be converted to digital audio and sent through a very, very high speed and large bandwidth cable that used to be the cables used for networking systems. So if you have never seen one of those, I do have here a good example. So this is our average category 5 or Cat 5e or Cat 6 or Cat 7 that is using a connector called RJ45 to transmit all those digital audio. However,
for the younger attending, I just like to point out that especially if you have been working in concerts in the 90s, or you are differently young like me, all the cable rolled was like probably the section of a couple of 24, 48 channels multicore, and the weight was something else. And we had when you had to remove it after a gig in the night with some mud around, that was really a big challenge. So the introduction of Cat 5 was already kind of a big step, but probably it was carrying also, as it was used in the beginning, it was carrying a lot of limitation as well. So there were many things that were not so comfortable anymore. This is why the adoption was a lot delayed and not immediately, oh, wow, that's fantastic. Please, sorry for interruption with old.
No, so as Andrea has just mentioned, anybody who has had some experience in the past trying to clean multi-core, carrying on your shoulders, the evolution of analog point-to-point communication to digital was already a great evolution. The cable that they have kind of chosen was the networking cables because they are very flexible, they are also very lightweight, they have some shielding skills to protect from grounding issues or from RF issues and stuff that the analog multi-cores would change. However, you kept the point-to-point limitation. So what changed literally was just the thickness, the gauge of the cable. When we started implementing Dante, and then Dante creates a network of products, a network of devices that can communicate with each other, we have expanded the capabilities towards the infinite. So on your screen now you have a very, very simple example on how creating a network, you can send the same audio to multiple destinations no matter where they are. Before, if we needed to split a channel, we used a splitter that would have a cost, that would have also implication on losing power of that signal. So you could have an active crossover that would then reboost the frequencies, or on a splitter you could have a passive or an active splitter as well. But that was more cost and also more gear for you to be traveling and carrying and collecting, setting up and tearing down. When we then established that a network system would be way better, why? That's the reason, because with the same cable, you can connect all the devices and send and receive audio from and to anywhere in the network. So in this case here, for example, we can have some audio coming from the stage to the main mixer, another feed, another split of those audio, multi-tracks at this point, would then be able to be sent to a recording station. At that stage box, you could receive some more audio coming, for example, from a wireless microphone rack receiver, and all this audio could be monitored on the network as well. Evolution of this simple system is to add more ins and outs. So if you can go to the next slide, please. That one would show how a natural evolution of your systems, no matter what, I can see here from the polls result that most of the people that are watching us are from AV conferencing. So I can tell you, this stage idea could really, really easily be changed to a corporate environment. For example, you have various conferencing rooms, and then you need to sum some of those conferencing rooms for some specific meetings. You can have the chairman in his room in the third floor doing a conference in real time using a network system throughout all the floors. Of course, in a stage like this, the beautiful part is that if you have a broadcast truck coming to your event, if you have the VIP area with the press and you need some audio there, you would be able to split the same audio, digital audio, high quality audio, uncompressed. Our technology accepts up to 32-bit, 192 kilohertz of audio samples. So that is a lot of quality that will be delivered to all these places. So just a recap: analog multi-core, point-to-point. Digital audio multi-core, still point-to-point. And at that point, there was not an interoperability between brands. Each brand would then decide how they would manage the data on that cable. With Dante, all the manufacturers, all the devices can talk to each other and send and receive audio from and to anywhere in the network.
So you touched some points that we will explore. One of the points you touched is interoperability. Now with Dante, whenever we are in a Dante network and we have Dante-enabled devices, we are capable of talking between us very easily. One of the examples that comes to my mind, I can listen to every channel of a front of house mixer using my Exim digital receiver, as much as I can listen to a conference mic from any point in the office, as long as so I can monitor it, even if I'm not physically in the room. And the opportunities are really a lot. Now, if we scale up again, today we see that in the industry, Dante is definitely the leading language. I would say kind of English of the audio languages, common ground for most of the people. But there is someone who doesn't speak English, but that doesn't mean it cannot speak with Dante. So there are open standards having sometimes different requirements, but then can somehow be integrated in the Dante network. So I'd start from there, and then I see a question that I will submit to you later.
Okay. So yeah, if you want to know a little bit about how we deal with open standards, I have a good analogy for you. If you try to bake pizza at home, you would need the best dough, the best tomato sauce, the best pepperoni, the best cheese. You can try. You're going to be using your oven, and maybe it's going to be delicious. However, Dante is like calling the best pizza place in town and having it delivered, and you just pay. So this is a kind of the way that we accept the other open standards. We are interoperable with AES 67, and now with the new Dante Domain Manager, we can also integrate systems with products coming with SMPTE 2110 protocols of audio transmission. However, the idea is manufacturers have chosen to use Dante because Dante is the full solution, always up to date, always investing in new technology, while the open standards, they behave themselves in a more theoretical way, teaching how to do yourself. So that's the difference about trying to do pizza at home and ordering from the best pizza place where everybody recommends in town.
That's a good analogy, even though my pizza is quite good.
That was specifically for Italian people.
Yeah. But 2 years of attempts before managing a decent pizza at home. So I really understand the point. It's okay if you are doing your dinner, but if you're working, most likely the ready solution, professional solutions, always up to date is very important. About importance, I think that at the heart of Dante, what we identify as a winning strategy is to work over networks. So you don't just connect 2 points. You build a network where everybody can get feed from or can feed signals in. How would you explain basically the concept of a network with a special high, because I see a question coming and I think this is the right moment to, or at least if not answer, to at least touch base on this concept with an eye on the clocking. So for digital audio, clock is very important. It's everything. So a special high on your answer has to be on the clock as much as a special high in the network has to be on the clock.
Sure. So first of all, what is a network, guys? A network is a communication that has no relation to the position where these devices are. So bring your minds back to the analog world. You need the microphone connected with a cable to the mixing desk, then connected to another cable to the amplifier, and then with another cable to the speaker. So this is a linear analog system. On the network, all the devices can be connected to the same spot, or as we normally say, connected to a switch that will manage all the directions. And this new network, this new system has nothing to do with the linearity of the signal. So the channels, the data, the audio can come and go to anywhere and from the same place to multiple destinations at the same time. So by changing from the analog system to a network system, you have way better control of what is being doing. So for example, this is how you would wire, this is how you would connect a system before Dante. So you would have one specific cable for your mixing desk to your amplifiers, another one to your recording interface. This red cable that is there is the so-called coax B and C clocking that would then synchronize all these devices. So when you used to work before Dante, you would need to make sure that all these cables were perfect, different, etc., etc., etc. Pointing to your clocking question, this system, as you can see here, has one master clock. It's an external device that is normally very, very expensive. And what that device would do, it would synchronize all the other devices to himself. So let's suppose this here is a system running with a 48 kilohertz sample rate. So that external master clock, that purple device on your lower left part of the screen, would be the maestro giving everybody the 48,000 pieces of a second, the 48,000 intervals for each of them to synchronize. Okay, that would work. It would work. However, you would relay only on one master clock that would have an external cost to your project. And if any of these red cables is faulty or not working perfectly, you would end up with jitter. That is when the digital audio goes out of control, goes out of synchronism, and can create those very, very nasty artifacts that can ruin your system, that can blow off your speaker, and worst of all, that could also blow off your ears. When you create a system using a network, that would be the next slide, please, you will only care about one cable, the networking cable. Through that networking cable, all the information is being sent. Digital audio, clocking, control, everything that is necessary for all these devices to interconnect and be in sync. So I will not tell you everything that you need to know about clocking, because I will invite you to do our certification program where we go step by step. But I can only tell you that the network can have a clocking. So the network itself will be providing those cycles, those slices of time, and each device can then derive from that very, very microsecond oscillation down to the device itself and then synchronize. One more thing before we go to the next topic is, previously on the analog, on the digital audio old system, you would only be able to have one sample rate for the entire system. So all the devices should be on 48 kilohertz. With a networking clock, what you can have is multiple sample rates deriving from the same microsecond oscillator. So that means that you could have some devices working at 48 kilohertz, some other devices working at 44.1, 96, or any other sample rate value. That is because there is no one master clock that is deciding the sample rates for everybody. There is the networking clock that is so accurate, so tiny that each specific device can understand that pulse, that maestro pulse, and then decide what frequency they will be using for their sample rates. I hope that this have answered the question, Andrea.
Let's ask Robin if it answered the question or if he wants some more clarification. Thank you, Robin, for the question. And
Thanks,
let's move more than moving on. I would like to move a little on the side of this topic. And so we saw digital audio entering the industry, I'd say mid of 80s. I don't know because I wasn't there yet, even though I'm old, not that old. And we saw that digital audio took over and over and over and over. So, do you think there is room for there is still room for analog audio? Is analog audio still having a place in the industry? And if so, exactly where do you think this place is? I have an example for you. When during a discussion with Patrick, we spoke about a guitar with a Ethernet cable output. I don't think this is gonna happen anytime soon again. But there are scenarios where the full system is completely digital. So how do you see the room for analog in the future of the industry, and if there is any?
Of course. So analog audio is vital. We will never give up on analog audio because analog is the way that we shape the waveform before bringing it to a digitalized version. Okay, so if you guys there remember of the Austrian American engineer called called Nyquist, together with other engineers, they kind of started the development of a way to sample, a way to take a picture of a waveform of any signal and be able to reproduce that in another place. So that is the basis of digitalized audio. If you think about digital audio as being a digital picture, and I always try to bring metaphors and analogies with visual examples because I think it helps. So if analog audio was part of a picture, analog audio would be the lights, would be the landscape, would be your subject, and then your picture can be digital. So analog audio is your capsule, the microphone capsule, is the tubes on your preamp, is the skin of your drum. So all those items, all those elements, and also the acoustic part is also analog. So if we want to have very, very good digitalized audio, first we need to have our analog realm and the real world, the real acoustics of that place, very, very highly and accurately treated. Because once that very good pre-amplified signal goes into a digital world in your computer or in a digital mixing console, that will remain, that will keep its features from the analog processing. So I don't think we will ever see a good professional microphone that has an RJ45 unless somebody will invent a microphone that has a preamp, good quality in it, but then you are just kind of compromising the way that things should work in a professional environment. So analog is necessary for the digital realm to work.
I'd like to kind of contradict you a little, not too much, because if I think about music and performances, of course, I totally agree with you. I use the example of a guitar. I don't see a guitar going out digital, because then it needs the tubes and or the vocal microphones or whatever. But if I think about other environments like broadcasting example or video conferencing, uh, I can think about some great microphones, really sounding great, that have an RJ45 instead of an XLR connector, and one is sitting just next to you. So I think your answer is depending very much on the environment. If we think music, and if we think where really the sound is the most important thing, and the creativity is the most important thing, probably we won't get rid of XLR and tubes. But if I think about professional environments where we need to be efficient, and where we don't need to be creative with the sound, when I do a video conferencing, I don't want a tube preamplifier for my voice most of the times, with some exceptions. But I guess that the digitalization is moving much faster than we might have expected. So do you see it in the same way, or out of your experience, like the completely digital networks are already a thing somehow, in my opinion?
Sure. So the example that you've given, and it's sitting right here next to me, it's a desktop microphone that has 4 lobes. So the purpose of this microphone justifies the full digitalization of it. First, because when you have 4 lobes, you need artificial intelligence to understand what's going on. So it's another element of the digitalized work process, so to say. However, the things that you pointed are very, very efficient when you have all the digitalized audio environment for control. So I think you touched the point where I believe that the digitalized audio, since the very, very beginning, offers remote control through networking environments. As you said, you don't even need to be in that room to control and monitor and route stuff and solve the problem of any corporate or commercial environment. The idea of these microphones here are to be fast, plug and play, solve your thing, and I would say that nobody is really, really going that deep on the audio quality, because normally in these conference systems or in these corporate environments, the speakers are also reduced in terms of the range. So when you're thinking about full spectrum audio from 20 to 20K, you need some better speakers, you need specific kinds of gear to work with that. Then I really, really would stick with a good analog first part of it and then digitalize it. If the whole system is intended to be flexible, scalable, fast, plug and play, then, and also operated by people that don't need to understand all the audiovisual graduation as we have done. So that is where a digitalized audio, since the very, very beginning, is preferable. Okay, so USB microphones, networking microphones, those microphones are intended to be plug and play, scalable, and at the same time, kind of straight to the point of the communication, not for audio recording applications, I would say. But I like the discussion, and I'm here to watch the industry very close.
Yeah, so most likely we will still have our KSM 8 on XLR, and the MXA will stick to Dante. About Dante, and this is again a little deviation for our discussion. I recently saw that in the same network we are not having only audio, but you started integrating the video side. Now, it's definitely not my field of expertise, but I'm very curious about it. So just an overview, if you can tell us something more about how video has been integrated in the network, that would be nice of you.
Lovely. So yeah, for everybody participating in this webinar right now, since last year, Audinate has indeed released the Dante AV module. So remember that picture where we was seeing a kind of a red PCB module that would go inside a product? Now, Audinate is also producing and establishing partnerships with video product manufacturers. So you can think about the same facilities of audio on a network. We are now offering video on the network. So it's a 4K signal up to 4K. So that means that anything lower than 4K would also be accepted. Up to 60 frames per second. Again, any frame rates lower than 60 would also be accepted. With embedded 7.1 audio, or 8 channels. I like to say 7.1 because the number is not coincidence. We also think about surround sound environments. Plus, in the same video feed, or in this AV feed, you would have control commands for the screens, the projectors, the video recorders. So for example, as you can see here in this image, we could have audio and video coming and going from anywhere to anywhere in this network, having the video already in sync with audio. So no more audio lip sync devices or no more video matrices, as I have been working a lot with those in the past. With Dante AV, you will simply connect your Dante AV device to the network, and then you can do as many splits as you want, extract the audio, mix it, and re-embed it, or synchronize with another stuff. So it's going to be a very, very flexible way of working. Then, if you are already thinking about protected video content, for example, a movie or a video clip or something that will have the HDCP, the copyright protection, our system already can control that, and we allow a certain amount of splits. So if you are thinking about streaming the same video for 10, 12 classrooms in a university, we can already deal with that. So Dante AV really will work exactly in the same way as Dante Audio. You plug the device to the network, that device will be automatically discovered by your Dante controller, and then you will have one video feed that can be up to 4K 60 frames per second, and 8 channels of audio already in sync and going through the network from that same Dante AV device, plus the controls. I hope that this is, if you want more information actually about Dante AV, there is an entire page on our website with the technical specs for you to check out.
So you're saying that in my show, I can send all my channels to the Obi-Wan with a couple of Ethernet cables through Dante, and get back in the same network the program feed for the monitor for when I don't see the stage. That sounds pretty good.
And that is with a maximum of a quarter of frame delay or latency. Okay, so we're looking here at something like a maximum of 20 milliseconds for the video, which is nothing. If you think that one frame, so 24 frames per second, is 1 second divided per 24. So it's a quarter of that. So we are actually very fast. And if you want to know about the encoding, we actually accept and we support various types of encoding processes. However, it will come native, the JPEG 2000. So if you want to Google the quality of JPEG 2000, is really, really awesome.
That triggers another question that a point we didn't touch yet, and I think is relevant. I mean, all these things will require bandwidth, and will require a powerful network. So does Dante need dedicated devices for the network? Do I need a Dante switch? Do I need a Dante specific cable or not? I think this is a very important point.
Okay, so the answer is no, you don't need anything specific for Dante. You can use any cable. You can use any cable that is specified for 1 gigabits per second if you're going to buy something new. If you need to implement Dante on an existing network that has some cables that are specified for 100 megabits per second, no problem. You can also work with the Dante system in that smaller capacity network. The only thing that will change is the amount of channels that specific network will accept. So basically, specifying all your system with any switch, any cable that is at least 1 gigabit per second on each cable and on each port, you can have with audio 512 channels in and 512 channels out in the same cable. And each device could then accept or send or receive those 512 channels. So it's literally a great capacity that Dante offers. If you are already thinking about Dante Video, the Dante Video system is also specified for a 1 gigabit per second network, and that would allow one signal, 4K 60 frames per second, with all those audio channels and the control channels. And video feeds, they change because the information of Luma, RGB, how much contrast you have in each scene or in each specific part of your movie, that will change the amount of bandwidth. It's different from audio that is always a constant bandwidth because silence is still the same amount of information as a clip-in audio. And in video, when we work with JPEG 2000, there is a calculation that, for example, a screen with only black and a small little white title occupies less bandwidth than a full color landscape with a lot of detail. So Dante AV is also specified for 1 gigabits per second network. So the network can be bigger. If you have so many other traffic going on your network, it's up to you. However, we recommend for Dante implementation a 1 gigabit per second network and cabling infrastructure.
That's very clear to me. So as this is clear, let's go to something a little more unclear, and let's play forecast. Without any doubt, all our industry is going through a very difficult moment. We are seeing a crisis that was totally unexpected, and we cannot really see clearly the future. But at the same time, I think this can be also an opportunity to figure out a different future and to think about a future technologically different from what has been so far. So without, I'm not going to ask you about products that will be released working for a manufacturer. I know very well that I have an idea, we call it the pipeline. I have an idea about the products in the pipeline in the next 2-3 years. But I want you to imagine a much bigger pipeline. So really, how do you imagine the audio networking in 10 years from now? I'd like you to start from a point. Like, we had Ethernet cables at home. We had a lot. If I think about, before it wasn't even an Ethernet cable, but around 2002, I thought, oh, I may need a network port in every room in my apartment. But few years later, that was not a need anymore. I don't need any Ethernet cable around for my Wi-Fi. So will we see wireless networks? Or I kind of know why we don't see them, but maybe it's worth a little explanation as well. And how do you see the future of audio networking in the long term?
All right. So if you think about the transition of having an Ethernet port on each room for a wireless solution, the fact that has enabled this transition to become true is, first of all, the power of transmission and reception of the wireless point. So you Shure sell the best digital wireless microphone system that I have ever tried, which is the Axient. So you know how hard it is to provide a constant, stable wireless connectivity. So if we could envision 10, 20 years from now, I think that real-time audio could eventually be a need or a requirement, could be eventually supported by wireless transmitters. However, we would see something like big antennas, big transmitters that would need to cross the space that we have, maybe if it's a big stage or stuff like that. What I think is we will end up having cheaper cabling infrastructure in the future, for example, to have better real-time communication anywhere in the world. So I actually invite everybody that is interested in seeing what I'm talking about. There was last week, and now it's able for you to rewatch on our website, a webinar called Dante Over Distance. That brings some applications that have been used in Sweden, here in Europe, and also between Edinburgh, which is Scotland, and London, with high speed fiber optics, so fiber cables connecting these two cities. And in Sweden, they have an entire country covered with fiber. So if you ask me to dream, I'm a musician. I would love to jam with you there where you are. So if we could use a cable that would be able to deliver audio in real time and video with a little delay, as I know that we're facing here something like 100 milliseconds, even with high internet connection, we would be able to jam in sync in time. That would be very cool, because most of us are going to be missing jamming with other friends for a long time now. For wireless solution, I think that when we picture a world where everything is wireless, I think the air, the atmosphere would suffer so much of all those emissions, transmission, and reception that I think that cables are still a better way of condensing a communication and providing. And just to finish everything is up to the application. So I think wireless for some parts of your system could work, but wireless for when you need a mission critic, you cannot lose something. It's the president's announcement. Then I would prefer cable even in 10, 20 years from now.
That's very good. I think if there is, usually I run trainings about ref coordination. So I think if there is any ref coordinator listening to us, we say, oh, thanks. Because having to coordinate another 48, 96 channels going here and there would have been probably extremely critical. At this point, I'd like to get the questions. We have one already. If you want to ask some questions, this is your moment, guys. And the question is, LiveWire and Dante will communicate with each other?
Not now. So far, we don't support LiveWire on the Dante network. However, I mean, from Audinate, okay, I'm talking to you now from my brand's, from my company's perspective. We want to communicate with any product. So LiveWire, in the same time as other dedicated brands protocols, they were designed to create a small ecosystem. So a small ecosystem means that that same brand would need to produce all the links in the chain. So in other words, I am talking here with the top microphone producer in the history. Maybe they have the best microphones, but they will need some amplifiers, or they will need some other pieces to build the perfect ecosystem. So at this point, if you need to connect anything that is coming from LiveWire to Dante, you would need a converter in between. I would say that better get rid of your legacy stuff and adopt Dante as soon as possible.
I see another question that I think we require a little clarification. So what is the difference between Dante and AES-67? So we know that Dante can relate to other protocols in using a kind of translation provided by AES-67, something like that. Can you clarify a little better this point?
Yes. So I can tell you everything you want to know about Dante. I'm not here to specifically help anybody understand AES-67, but I want to help you understand what really happens in a network. So when you choose a Dante product, that Dante port has a module behind that is taking care of your audio encapsulation, so transforming all those zeros and ones of the binary digitalized audio into Ethernet packets. They will know where they need to go, where they came from, what time, so they are synchronized. If they need to go to one direction, they will not bother other directions, so we can optimize the network when using Dante, and you can have with one click any kind of routing you need. AES-67 works in a different way. So AES-67 is a document that manufacturers can download and read and try to figure out how they will bake their pizza on top of that recipe. So what Dante does is that, okay, I will get your AES-67 originally kind of audio, and I will do my magic for that audio to be sent and received to my Dante products. There's just one thing I would like to tell you. If you guys are kind of busy thinking about open standards, specifically for AES-67, there's one thing that I will tell you, is that AES-67 is a free solution where Dante is a paid solution. But then that free solution makes no money for the people who are developing that. So it's like you accept a favor right now, but then if that favor goes wrong, you cannot claim responsibility. This is just one thing. And the other thing is, from all the AES-67 products that are in the world, 70% are used by Dante or are used in a Dante network. I would pretty much be able to tell you lots more, but I just think that you need to understand this. Open standards are free, but they are not related to a company. So if something goes wrong, who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. Think about this, okay?
Okay, yeah, I'd say that in my view, I consider AES-67 as a weird adapter that I always carry with me. If really the need be, okay, I will use it to, to go over the day and to troubleshoot something or to realize something that was not really meant to be. But in a planning phase, I experienced the up and downs of using AS67, and it's just an adapter between different words. If I have to, I use it. If I can design by myself, I love to design, having all my nice in the analog domain. All my nice XLR cables do not go through RCA TRS adapters to find a solution for a problem. I think this is going to be the last question because we already are going a little over time. I hope no one is too busy and we are still engaging enough to stay with us a few more minutes. Question about preferred switches, if you are recommending any brand. I know already the answer actually, but this is why I expand the question. And if there is something you do not recommend for a Dante network.
So yeah, let's start from the final part of your question. There are just two things that you should avoid when buying something new for your Dante system. The first of all, and it's really the most important, is that we don't accept switches with the so-called green Ethernet or the economy efficiency Ethernet that is also symbolized by 3E. So EEE, or in some switches there is a kind of a green leaf, like a green plant leaf that represents ecology, etc. Okay, we have nothing against ecological products. However, how that EEE works is that it decides when to shut, when to close the ports of your network switch. So switches with green Ethernet, you should either avoid, don't buy them, or if you can, disable that feature inside the configurations of that switch. The second thing is, if you are buying a switch that has a blocking architecture, you should avoid that as well. So we recommend non-blocking architecture switches, which means that each of your ports will be working in full speed. So if it's a 1 gigabit port, each of them will be working full speed. And internally, all the ins and outs of the switching process will accept more bandwidth. So a non-blocking architecture switch means that if your switch has 10 ports that are 1 gigabit bidirectional, inside that switch up to 20 gigabits of data could be processed. So the calculation is each port is 1 gigabit per direction. So each port would need 2 gigabits. If you have 10 ports, you would be able to traffic 20 gigabits of data inside. So those are the two things that we should always look for. Avoid green Ethernet and avoid blocking architecture. So you should look for the non-blocking architecture. And if you really need to know when to buy or before you buy something, there is on our website a kind of a blacklist of some switches that have demonstrated themselves incapable of handling the Dante network. Just a very few models in some manufacturers. However, my trainer's advice is buy the switch that you can call the vendor right when the problem will happen. If you're going to buy a switch that comes from somewhere online because it costs a little bit less, etc., the responsibility is on you. If you're going to be buying a switch from your local provider, from the shop that you know the owner, etc. That is the best option always. Buy stuff from people who you can call for support.
That's very good. Last but not least, I think I see that we don't have a lot of people we have a lot of people not having a Dante certification yet online. So this triggers my last topic. We all went through a series of webinars in this period. We all have been working on education. And I think for me and you, we worked in two ways. I definitely used some time to learn a lot of new things, as much as I spent some time on the education, on the other side of a barricade, giving some trainings. So from a Shure point of view, we offer Shure Talent LMS, that is an online portal. And on top of that, we have, as Shure Mia, we have a monthly program of webinars, free to attend, and that cover, I'd say, a lot of different aspects in the audio industry, from AV networking, conferencing, wireless, and so on. Do you want to tell us something about your activity as a trainer and as well as a learner? Like, did you step into something interesting outside of your Audinate world that is worth mentioning? From my side, I really love to mention Practical Show's webinars. They released about 50 webinars in less than 2 months. And if you get the chance, it's a recommendation other than the Shure offer. What about you?
All right. So yeah, first of all, inviting everybody to create a free account on this website that you can read there, audinate.com/certify. Then you will also have access to our free education program that covers the levels 1, 2, and 3 to better understand and operate your Dante devices. There are also some other short webinars that are introduction to networked audio, getting started with Dante, and for people who are already experienced with the Dante devices, there is the Dante Domain Manager technical training as well that will teach you how to understand your systems from a bird's eye view. Outside Audinate, what I really am interested in, that's my professional academical path, is on how our brain perceives audio. So this goes from how much frequencies do we need to hear, which are the frequencies that trigger emotions in our brain, what is latency and how we perceive delayed audio when you're talking about transient, rich material that can be a drum kit or something very transient rich, something like an arpeggiator or something like that, or how our brain perceives more smooth frequencies like a synth pad or a bass sound, something like that. That's my audiophile kind of research line. And for the networked audio, what I suggest you to get yourselves in is some more video lessons about how to configure a switch, things like quality of service, things like IGMP. So there are plenty of videos on the network that you can watch and get yourselves a little bit more experienced. And hopefully in the close future, we'll be able to jam again.
That's very good. I'd really like to thank you. It's been beautiful working with you, preparing this interview and doing it. So thank you very much, Gus. I'm sure we will meet at some point again, more easily than now that we see blocked frontiers and whatnot. And stay healthy, stay safe. And thank you very much again. Bye.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Thank you, everybody from Shure. I see you on audinate.com/certify. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.